The moment lunch, or whatever it was, the world was still gray and formless, ended, she escaped back to the deck. Her eyes that had been dry, crusty feeling had been open too long from being up too late. How long had it been since she left the house? It was not mad having clocks or watches around, despite just eating a rather substantial meal. She felt a little lightheaded, but not queasy. Even with the rhythmic rocking of the ship, she walked steadily, and her stomach remained firmly digesting the surprising good repast. "Lady, Missy, darling," a pirate ran up to her, a loop stirring his hands. Two other pirates came reluctantly behind, looking chagrined. One of them cradled a badly bleeding hand. "My goodness, whatever happened here? Me and these louts was just arguing about the proper play of cat's cradle," the pirate with the string said. "The white duke here kept flubbing it up." "I had to cut him," the second pirate admitted, pointing at the wound on the third's hand. "And you show us how to do it proper like," the duke asked, heedless of his injury. Wendy gave them all a severe look. "Let me take care of this fellow first, and then we will see what we can do." She took the pirate's bloody hand and gently peeled open his fingers for a better look. It wasn't so bad, really, just deep and narrow. All it needed was to be thoroughly cleaned before infection set in. For this, they needed some pure rum and one of Wendy's precious handkerchiefs. The pirate tried not to swear during her judicious application of the stinging cleanser. Only then did she take the loop of string and demonstrate the proper sequence of the cat's cradle. She even included some of the more difficult variations like the clock tower and the bishop's cap. Delighted, the pirates clapped her on the back rather harder than she would have liked and strode off, guffawing and chatting like there had never been a row to begin with. Wendy sighed and shook her head. If all of Neverland's adventures were as easily won as that, she was in for a nice time indeed. She leaned on the gunwale and looked out. Was it getting lighter, really, this time? Yes, the rosy fingers of dawn had finally slipped through the fog and gently pulled it apart, separating the tendrils, weakening it. Wendy watched in fascination. She almost never saw the sunrise except in the winter, and that was through her window, through the grey sprawl of London town. Nothing like this. As the sea lightened and the sky began to clear, the two elements resolved themselves into colors unlike anything she was used to brilliant emerald and deep aquamarine, pellucid azure and shining lapis. It was so storybook perfect she wouldn't have been surprised if all the sun came out with a great smiling face drawn upon it. "Miss Darling," came a whisper before her. Wendy spun around. A cavishly skinny pirate stood there, the one who had leered at her so loathsomely before. His one eye was narrow and lecherous, his smile thin and frightening. "I don't think we've properly met yet. How do you do?" Wendy said, putting out her hand. "Oh, I do just fine," the pirate growled, and pushed her back up against the railing. Wendy was caught before she could even figure out what was happening. It took her a moment to find out, and one more to realize, despite struggling, she had no ability to fend off this attacker. "Unhand me," she said. The pirate laughed, his foul-smelling breath nearly asphyxiating her. Wendy screamed. The pirate leaned over her. A shot rang out. So loudly, so close, she could feel its hot wind singe on her face. Her attacker looked surprised and then slumped on the deck. A pool of blood formed under his head. As his body crumpled into a more permanent position, she saw the perfect hole behind his ear where the bullet had gone in. Ugh. Wendy knew from story this was a time when women screamed and screamed and screamed, and sometimes men too. But she was happy just to be able to breathe freely and have this monster off her. She felt a little of anything except relief. Wendy stood on the deck, posed either heroically or demonically, depending how you read the scene. He had his pistol out and aimed in case this foul miscreant rose again, and curious golden two-cigar holder balanced in his hook. Some smoke rose from both cigars as well as the muzzle of his gun. The rest of the crew appeared as silently as rats, and just as curious, from all parts of the ship, including the crow's nest. "Miss Darling, are you hurt?" Captain Hook said, his tone soft and flat. "No, I don't. I'm a little..." She touched her mouth and throat, wiping away grease from the dead man's fingers. Then she began to shake. Physically, I'm all fine. Mr. Smee, have the crew remove this filth at once," Hook said with a curl of his lip, the gun and cigars still holding steadily. "And someone bring Miss Darling a draught of something to restore her spirits." "Oh, I don't..." Wendy began, but then again, maybe a drop of something would not have been such a bad idea. The shaking had her spread to her feet and parts of her body untouched by the villain, and she was having a hard time bringing in all the ants she began to feel crawl under her skin. 3 pirates came forward, none of them named Mr. Smee, Wendy was fairly certain, and unceremoniously dumped the body overboard. A 4th brought a mop and duly began scrubbing the blood and brains away. 2 more rushed aside, one holding a sliver and crystal decanter, and the other one a matching cap, both of them which looked like they were from Captain Hood's personal stash. Someone held her upright, and someone else poured a few drops of a liquid, thick and amber, into the glass. She downed it one at a gulp, feeling all eyes on her. It burned just as she had imagined it would. Her eyes felt like they were spinning in their sockets. "Begging your pardon, Captain," she heard someone say as she staggered a bit, trying to collect herself. "But we're back in our proper seas now, Captain, and of course for Neverland." "Thank you, but right now we have more serious things to clear up here," Hook growled. He looked over at the crew, into each and every man's eyes. The muzzle of his gun followed closely. "This is how you treat her?" he demanded, his voice carrying across the deck, although he didn't shout. "I bring you someone to be your mother, and this is how you treat her?" "Oh," Wendy said, apologies coming to her lips far too easily. The deadly niceties of social convention, the stupidity of being raised by the Darlings, or maybe it was just the drink. "Most of them were gentlemen. They didn't all treat me badly. It was just that one fellow, and I'm sorry, what?" She blinked as his words caught up with her brain. Captain Hook put his arm protectively around her shoulder, careful not to burn her with his cigars. He addressed the men with a tone of great disappointment. "I bring you a lady and gentlewoman to take care of all of you. This is what you do?" "We would never," one pirate called out piteously. "Valentine is a villain. Everyone knowed it. He's the worst," another called out. "We was nice to her. I gave her me own bowl for lunch. She fixed up my pants up real good. I'd never harm her head." "Well, you almost let this happen," Hook said, firing his pistol in the air. Wendy winced at the repetition of the loud sound, the ringing in her ears, but didn't stop her from speaking. "Excuse me, I'm sorry, I don't believe I quite understand what you're saying," she pressed. "I'm glad you have helped out around here and while on board, but as someone just said, we're not far from Neverland now. My journey aboard your lovely ship is nearly over. It will soon be time to disembark. I'm not here to be a mother to anyone. I'm here to have adventures." "And adventures you shall have," Hook promised. "And after we leave the cursed waters of Neverland, we shall travel the high seas, plundering and looting all the way. You shall fix our pants, do our laundry, mend our wounds, and generally take care of us. Probably do a much better job than Mr. Smee." "I shall do nothing of the sort," Wendy protested, almost stamping her foot. "We had a deal. I bought a passage to Neverland for Peter's shadow." "Yes, and here we are, almost awry," Captain Hook said politely, but a nasty grin stretched across his face. He indicated the horizon of his gun. Far off in the distance was indeed a pale, bright line, a glowing bleach. "That was what you bargained for, and that was all you bargained for. I never promised to put you ashore." That's the end of that chapter.